I was a very imaginative kid. I was always reading books. I was always like had my head in the clouds. I was over imagining everything. Everything was romanticized and cool. But eventually, I kind of had to learn to live in the real world. So that caused me to kind of struggle with talking to people and kind of getting people to see things the way I did in romanticized, like interesting way. So in 20, when I was completely isolated in the world from, I was like, oh, hey, what if I tried out this art of this thing? And then I slowly to demonstrate who I was as a through my art. I have an idea first, and then I kind of pick I want for it. So sometimes I'm like, oh, this one will be way better in art, or this one will be way better as a novel. It totally depends on the idea itself. I love the aspect of being able to turn an image from my brain into like an physical thing, like something a human printer, and that's just incredible. Like it existed in my brain, created it from nothing, and I think that's an incredible part of this process.
Say what initially drew me towards theater really was the collaboration aspect of things. I've always been someone who is creative, like working in visual music, and while there's plenty of collaboration within those, it's such a central part of theater, getting to be a part of something, and like working creatively in a room with so many different people to create one project together, and having something that only lasts for a short amount of time. I leave big impacts, hopefully with people. Artists. I really like to center queer stories, neurodivergent stories, or things that are important to me and to life. And portraying them on stage, I think they're relatable to everyone, no matter what. Knowing someone who has the experiences, just or getting to get a little bit insight other people experiences. Those sort of things are all important to me and what I like creating.
My journey I think started this very specific. In dad's old truck, it was a great '92 Dakota. I can still smell it. It was dusty, farm truck, and he put in, I think it was a tape of Thorogood. That one came out, and I was like, this is what is that? And it's like, that is electric guitar. That was the I was like, I want to do that. I love really being able to play with a little. I felt like better musicians than me, and I think that's really for my music. My music is always people that I want to play with who, or push me to be better or can teach me new things. I see myself as somebody who learn and wants to work, collaborate, and people, and just kind of create. If I'm not excellent, I might become cranky. It just feels good inside. If I'm not feeling great, it makes my mood improve. So for me, that's a sign to keep doing it. I think to be a teacher and to like kind of be put for music. While doing that, you really like want to do music and be passionate about passion, and I am. Because I do not want like because I or have to or whatever. Like I genuinely love it. Just love it. It's one of my favorite things. Just makes me.
It was about 6 years ago in June when my friend Kat ended her yearly poetry circle that I longed for poetry. And I started complaining to people that I miss poetry. And somebody suggested that I host open mics. Well, I didn't know what the heck I was getting into. But 6 years later, I've met a lot of people, and we have quite the community that was just built around poetry. And it's a beautiful community. I think I can speak for all of us. We are a very welcoming community. We want to support people, and we want people to feel supported. And we want them to know that they can sing about anything that bothers them, anything that makes them happy, anything that occupies their mind. Once you start just building a community, you just have to keep going because it brings people together. Again, everybody feels good when they gather around the topic, like in our case, poetry.
federal nonprofit mandated by the federal government to help Black, Indigenous people of color start, grow, or scale their businesses by providing them the information, resources, network, and pathways to funding to do so. But then over the last couple of years, it progressed because what we started to understand was there was a lot of like social injustice and issues in the community that we hadn't even like explored or didn't realize that the community was facing. The way I look at it is, how can someone empower others when they don't feel empowered themselves? Over time, we've become like an organization that helps like bridge gaps for the BIPOC community as well. So put together a lot of community engagement initiatives that close gaps, different things in sports and entertainment and arts and whatnot, to make sure people feel empowered and thereby like making it possible for them to empower others. We love working for the community, and we want the community to come be more in tune with working with us because we're always here to support.
The important thing to keep in mind with analog is that it's an experience, and we focused on what that experience is. So when we built it out right from the very beginning, it was all based on what that experience would be for a person.
So when we were curating the collection of books, we think about that our guests that are coming in, but we've also created a collection up on our rail shelves of antique cameras, projectors, types, all things analog. And it's created an atmosphere that what we like is people come in to feel like they've visit us in our home.
So a lot of the details affects how you feel when you come in, make it very comfortable. So it feels like even more than just a bookstore. It feels comfortable, like Penny says, it feels like home.
And when they leave, they feel like they've visited with us. And that's the beauty of logbooks. How can we become part of the community when we don't really know anybody? So we see the books as being the meeting that could bring us together with people, but our passion actually lies in the events and bringing people in for different reasons. So we find that when people walk into a bookstore, it's a little bit different from other stores. You're walking into a world full of stories, and everyone has a different story when they come in.
We want to provide a space, make it available, basically free of charge, to groups that maybe aren't quite that common.
What we reap back from the community is so huge. So for us, it's absolutely what fuels us to keep going.
Yeah, and I think it's a very important thing to have in the community, is a space to do that. I mean, in some places they call that the third place. It's it's your work, your home. Third place is the community.
When I was just a little girl, I didn't come from a family of great means. And so any opportunity that came to me, mostly came to me through schools. And I did have a great aunt who was a music teacher as well. And she put me in the music festival when I was 6. And I got to sing a song. I got to wear a pretty dress. And people clapped. And I was hooked. Not necessarily on the performing, but on the feedback. On singing and having someone tell me it was nice. And then as I got older, I was in the music festival as a soloist every year from grades 1 through 12, facilitated by amazing music educators like Bev Pashik and Barb Walker, Tanya Arnold, and Don Robb. A little bit later, George Evelyn at the University of Lethbridge. And that interaction between preparing something and having someone let me know how I did, really, even though I didn't always like the criticism, but what I liked was that someone was invested in that moment with me. And I think that really impacted not necessarily a love for performing, but a love for teaching. I believe that the act of and the trust and the faith and belonging to a choir is more important than the music that we make. Allowing yourself to be part of that collective, whether it's in the choir or in the audience, really can enhance your life through self-discovery, through connection with others, being part of a collective. you know, really, it really is my passion to facilitate that. And I love to make good music. And I work my choirs really hard to make good music. But it's in the making of the music that we learn about who we are as a community. And it moves me. And it's really the thing that inspires me the most. So if people even feel a little bit of that, then I guess my job has been done in the way that I want it to be done.
I knew that my story was certainly influenced by Kathy in a very profound way. Obviously, I became the conductor of the children's choir and took over that role from her as I grew under her leadership. But when I reached out to other people, it was incredibly obvious that my story was not a standalone, isolated story, because anyone I reached out to, the responses were overwhelming, that someone not only was willing to share their story, but were like dying to share their stories with us because it changed them for good. And they wanted that story to be known, and they wanted to share the way that Kathy changed their life as a musician, but also, and perhaps more importantly, as a human being.
I'm familiar with Joan Waterfield. I didn't have the chance to work with her, but I know that she was an inspiring and audacious and a talented and unapologetic advocate for the arts in our communities. And not just elite art, but art for people in the community. And really, I think, laid a foundation for a sense of belonging and purpose through the performing arts and visual arts. And I'm just really floored that I get to be a recipient of an award inspired by her. Never mind share the recipient list with people who have really personally impacted my life, who I really admire: Peggy Maisie, Fran Rude, George, Evelyn and Lottie Austin, Don Robb, just to name a few. So it's just, I can't believe that my name gets to exist on a list with them. And also just very grateful, because I think when you are a community arts leader, you do it for your community and not for the recognition. So just incredibly grateful that I have been recognized for what I'm just passionate about and very dedicated to, and really inspired to keep going and keep building.